I firstly welcome Sarah Rowbottom. I've got a few lines here on biographies for each of them. Sarah and I have worked together actually at the Perth Festival, so it's great to have her on the panel tonight. Sarah is a curator and producer, or she's allowed to call herself that, working across international festivals, performance and interdisciplinary development platforms. She co-founded Proximity in 2012 and has co-curated festivals at Agua, at Pika, Fremantle Arts Centre and the Blue Room. Sarah's been part of the Perth International Arts Festival team since 2007 and most recently is creative producer of the Museum of Water for PF in 2017 and into 2018. She was associate producer at Performing Lines in WA in 2012 and 14 and has been supported by the Jump National Mentorship Program and the IETM Australia Council Collaboration Project. Sarah is a creative producer of Ecosexual Bathhouse by Pony Express, some of you who may have seen this in Pika at Perth or at Carriage Works in Sydney or in the Royal Botanic Gardens in Melbourne. So welcome, Sarah.
You've basically said half of my speech already. Good evening, everybody. I think it's always good to start these things with something a little personal, so you know the context of who I am and also where I'm speaking from, because for me, in curating, context is everything. So my name is Sarah Rowbottom and I'm a Perth-born 7th generation Australian. I'm a woman, I'm 32 years old. I grew up south of the river and I went to Curtin Art School. I'm a curator and producer. And as Margaret has said, I've worked on and off at Perth Festival since 2007 under 4 artistic directors. I'm currently the creative producer of a 2-year project called Museum of Water. I'm a creative producer for transdisciplinary duo Pony Express. We're the creators of Ecosexual Bathhouse. This is a work that invites audiences to explore the environment like a lover with the hope of forging a deeper connection to save it. I curate an annual festival of ideas at the State Library of Western Australia, which is a program merging artists with scientists, environmentalists, queer advocates, broadcasters, and so on to discuss relevant issues of today. As you can see, my practice as a curator is very eclectic. My main area of practice, however, is in live art, performance artists, and socially engaged practices, which has a long lineage and history from visual arts practice. However, this often extends to work with people who are outside of the arts community. I like to connect people together and build teams. I like unlikely pairings and mixed personalities. It kind of sounds like a HR role, but perhaps caring and bringing people, different communities of people together is the bulk of what curating is to me. I've been based in Perth my entire life, and proudly so. There's an energy in this place that's unlike other cities in Australia, I think. I feel like it's a place that you can put an idea out into the world and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to back you. I say this with a lot of sincerity because this is the generosity of the people in this place is how I've got to where I am today. So as Margaret said, I co-founded Australia's first festival of intimate one-on-one performance alongside 2 other collaborators, Kelly McCluskey and James Berlin in 2012. The focus for Proximity was to create an environment which brought together artists from all disciplines who wanted to explore intimate art making. In my experience, once I finished art school, there was nowhere in Perth for artists who actually wanted to do this. There wasn't a space for movement practitioners to work with visual artists, to learn from each other's vocabulary and practice. There was no space for live art. Although Proximity is a fleeting moment on the yearly calendar, this was our offer to artists. Proximity is more than a typical festival model. It's an attempt to create a space for artists to be part of a dialogue that is interrogating practice and nurturing development. We like experiments, we like failure, we like the freedom to try something new and to throw it out and start again. This is something that I feel like as curators and as artists we don't really do enough. And the unique aspect of curating a festival like Proximity is that the program is very specifically centred on work that is intimate and participatory and for an audience of 1 at a time. Now there's a few reasons for why we have decided to have such a strong focus on this niche form, and I'm going to talk about 2 only. And the first one is the power of one-on-one. Can everyone raise their hands who has done a one-on-one performance before here? There was like 3 or 4 people. Great. I would like you to keep your hands up if you could still think about this experience today. It's pretty good. Well, I'm going to take you through a one-on-one experience that has stuck with me till today. So during 2012, when I went to a show during PF, which went for about 3 hours, I went on my own, and I noticed that there were other people on their own as well. At the start of the show, I was in a fairly ordinary foyer. There was a man who was going up to people one by one, asking them something. I waited for him to come to me, and when he finally did, he asked me if I had my question. I thought to myself, I hadn't brought a question. So I sat and I pondered what I might ask, what kind of question I would bring into a work I had no idea what was actually about or what was going to happen. By the time I thought of something, we were out the front entrance, up the fire escape, and let into the side of a building. I stepped inside and walked straight into a cobbler's shop. It felt like the early 1900s. There was a man. He was hunched over, busily putting away shoes. He gestured for me to have a seat. He took off my shoes and laid them neatly next to a long line of others. I thought to myself, maybe they're the other people that had come before me. From here, I made my way through the building, a series of makeshift rooms of old world bars of opulence, separated by darkness and narrow corridors, sometimes requiring you to crawl through the space. Each space, I met another person. I danced with the devil. I laid in a pool of wheat with a woman. I watched a man get aggressively thrown out of a bar before I was. However, the most memorable of them all was this. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes for a second. Okay. Imagine walking into a pitch black space. Your eyes are desperately darting around, looking for a speck of light, of shapes, of something familiar to ground yourself to. There's nothing. You wait. After a moment, you feel the presence of someone in the room with you. You don't hear them, and you can't see them. You can just feel their energy next to you. Your pulse starts to race, your heart thumps, pupils dilate. Suddenly your hands are met by another. Your arms are lifted, and your hands lay on the chest of a body that feels genderless. Long hair, beating heart, breath. Your arms are slowly lowered down their body. You wonder how far they're going to go. Suddenly, your hands are gripped and you're flung around the room, pulled in circles as fast-paced you almost lose your footing. Laughing, exhilarated, scared, all at the same time. Then you're pushed up against a wall. You let out a deep breath before you suddenly start to have the sensation of falling backwards. Your feet rise. Your back is floating. Your balance gone. For a moment there, you've lost sense of your reality and disappeared into cinematic imagination. You could be anywhere. Thank you, you can open your eyes now. This was an experience I had the same year we started Proximity Festival, and it was by an Italian company called Teatro de los Sentidos, directed by Enrique Vargas. The company are known throughout Europe for working with the senses. They create their work in darkness, and they explore scent, taste, touch, sight and hearing to create worlds that sometimes get us to face our greatest fears. Their work is participatory, one-on-one and intimate. Their sets are immaculate and their performers live and breathe the world of the work. They're very unapologetic in their process. It takes a lot of time. For me, this experience is one of many that has stuck with me until now. Similarly, Proximity invites this kind of intimate engagement with its audience. Although not all centred on the senses, the interactions are playful, political, personal, and sometimes very difficult. Since 2012, our audiences have meditated on the breath and planned their remains after death, climbed rooftops in search of love, sat behind the wheel of a learner driver, and learned to twerk, stargazed in daytime, remapped their perceptions of borders, sex-talked, and sung Whitney full throttle in Agua's public galleries. As we head into 2017, our artists are flipping the power back to Muslim women, exploring acts of care and control in plant life, weaving power-laden rap into black matriarchal living sculptures, and creating twisted games of human versus technology with tennis ball machines. The possibilities of one-on-one performances are wonderfully limitless, and as a result has placed artists and audiences into situations they have not previously imagined. But perhaps the most fitting reason for why one-on-one in this discussion is about venues. It's about how we infiltrate space. It's about how we can shift the institutional mentality where anything or anywhere can be a performance space. For the last 4 years, Proximity has partnered with major institutions to open their doors to independent artists who are wanting to do this. One of the joys of starting Proximity in Fringe World 2012 at the Blue Room Theatre was that we got given access to the entire building. So suddenly stairwells, bathrooms, office spaces, kitchens, studios became up for grabs. Our invitation to artists was simple: to create a work that was purposely sited in the building, to invite an audience member into this space and to participate in a 15-minute interaction before moving on to another. The ideas could be anything. They didn't have to follow a theme. The form was the context. The venue was the playing ground. To have the freedom of working in this way without the pressure of future and meeting KPI targets was the best way for us to start Proximity. And I feel other ARIs may share a similar feeling. In 2012, Jackson Eaton invited audiences to fondle his beard in the male toilets. Sarah Nelson took you on a ride around the cultural centre on a track bike. Renee Coles wrote punk songs from small injustices people have had in their life in the offices. Jen Jameson demonstrated how to be more water-wise by taking a 3-minute shower in the change rooms and then inviting you to do the same. From here we started to get more ambitious, and in 2013, when Pika opened their doors to us, we were able to have access to the entire gallery space in between exhibition periods. The building was completely empty when we got in there. Ian Sinclair watched movies and talked about life in the staff kitchen. Sarah Elson invited you to destroy one of her artworks and use the materials to create a new one in the studios. Kat Jones created an empathic limb clinic with plants in the central galleries. And Moya Thomas invited you to consider the use of gun violence, to be an assassin and to shoot her down in the cultural centre. Fremantle Arts Centre in 2014 was new territory for us. It moved into a larger footprint, with gardens and double the amount of space on offer. Tanya Lee took over the entire South Lawn with a series of obstacle courses you needed to complete in a custom-made double lycra bodysuit. Emily Parsons Law turned Kathleen O'Connor Gallery into an air bar where you could try different airs from different places and times on Earth. And in the studio, Kat Jones offered a one-on-one lesson on the clitoris, exposing the horrifying fact that key imagery had been removed from major medical books and only reinstated 10 years ago. And in this work, you had to sew a clitoris with lollies. It was very funny watching people walk around eating their clitorises. In the screen space, the thumping sounds of major laser plays on repeat as Carolyn Garcia taught you how to move from your hips and twerk. I could keep going, as now Proximity is in its 5th year, each time in a different space with a new group of artists and a new set of intimate invitations. But with Robert Cook here, it seems apt to maybe draw my focus to the Art Gallery of WA and Proximity 2015 to finish this talk. This was the first time that AGWA had invited a live art platform like Proximity into its space. It was a very bold ambition on both ends. The occupation of Proximity at AGWA was possibly one of the most challenging and rewarding festivals to date. For the first time, we ran Proximity during the day, with artists occupying galleries, the concourse, the boardrooms, the security, with this additional layer of audience members floating around. And in bringing it back to the topic of tonight's panel on how working outside the white cube impacts artists, as much as Proximity the artists in Proximity set the parameters for their work, quite often there were factors beyond their control. Working in Agua brought up a number of things. The inherent unpredictability of live art in a gallery which predominantly curated 2D and 3D art. At Agua, we had a gallery guide once asked us to shush as we were interrupting their tour. This raised this very fundamental question of the hierarchies of art forms and how they valued. Was Mish talking about her sex life more or less important than the state art collection? What would have happened if the gallery guide interrogated her work into her tour? The infiltration into the day-to-day routine of staff of security and operations also impacted. In Leon Ewing's work, Raised by Brutalism, staff had to detour to their main route to the offices on various levels of the gallery as he played for 4 hours on a bass guitar which infiltrated and basically went through the entire building. Although it doesn't sound like a very big impact, closing down the main thoroughfare for 60-odd staff members every day was quite a challenge and also required staff to change their daily routine and also a constant negotiation with the artist. I applaud Agua for that. There's also the added layer of passers-by, of unwitting bystanders and voyeurs of these sometimes intimate moments who may have not asked to see this. And then, of course, there's the challenges of an ARI working with major institutions, which is a topic that is way too big to delve into right now. But what was most impressive about this partnership was the openness to do it, to take a risk, and to fucking give it a go. It's been a pleasure talking to you all. Thank you.